Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldscythe. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will be continuing reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands from Archive of Our Own called The Rescue Party, Chapter 3. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. On with the show! The Rescue Party, Chapter 3. A Slight Unraveling. Teolaran would never admit that his young apprentice was right. The baskets were quite a bit heavier than normal. They almost felt as full as they had been in the days before the darkening, when Tyrion had been bustling with people and constant stream of precious gems were shipped daily from the mountain mines. As pain threatened to sweep into his heart, he immediately shot such thoughts away. He had lost nearly all his friends on that single horrible day, and he did not wish to remember it. Grunting, he settled the basket down, as Dalmo did the same with his own, his young charge brushing back a bit of dark brown hair that hadn't escaped his braids. "All right. Let's see what we have to work with, eh?" he asked. "I believe your basket had the uncut stones, and mine had the coal for the forge." He twisted the lid off and leaned over, only for his heart to jump into his throat. A demented, smiling Vanya stared up at him, coal dust all over his body from where he huddled with his knees to his chest. Agdalma screamed. Teolaran whirled to see that another blonde elf had leapt out of his student's basket. "Forgive us," the elf covered in coal dust before him replied in a refined Nullafinoan accent, eloquently stepping out of his basket. Teolaran felt his heart skip a beat. He knew that voice! But, know it or not, he would not allow random elves in his forge. "You are trespassers here," Teolaran declared, as he struggled to place the voice to that face. The elf who had spoken simply held his gaze. Teolaran turned away to look at the one who had leapt out of Dalmo's basket like a wild rabbit. But this one paid him no heed, scanning at the shelves and mumbling to himself. "I think I left it in the back," the elf said, marching towards the vault as if he owned the place. Teolaran's heart stopped. "Feanor?" he whispered, because there was no mistaking the voice of Feanor, his former friend and lord. Feanor, who had led the Noldor across the sea to chase a fallen Vala. "Teolaran, you look like a minnow with your mouth open like that." "Yes, it is I," Feanor declared. And the smith could only stare. It sounded like Feanor. It walked like Feanor, but it looked like a wild animal. It's not my fault that Arafinwa isn't as good at concealment songs as I thought, but he tried his best. Now, I'm searching for the white powder experiment that I had been working on before the darkening, the long-lost lord explained. "Feanor, you were exiled, in case you forgot!" Teolaran cried in disbelief when he found his words. "How can you be here?" Feanor smiled then, looking as deranged as the day he left. "I died." He even motioned towards the other elf. "Not too, but then we decided to escape from Mandos. Come now, I don't have much time." "Nolafinoe?" Teolaran looked at the other trespasser, who stood sheepishly nearby. "What are the two sons of High King Finwë doing hiding in my baskets?" "He may have swung a sword hilt at Ingwion's face," Vingolfin said, as if it answered all his questions. And the smith's face went pale as parchment. "My lord Feanor, I may have sworn myself to you, but as your friend, you will forgive this one instance of questioning. Why do I keep hearing reports of you hitting innocents with swords? Don't fret, my old friend. Ingwion is very much alive. Alive or not, the Vala can and will exile you. And that is, if you are lucky." Feanor sighed. "I'm already exiled. And dead. I also cursed myself to the void. So, really, there is nothing more they can do. Say, is this the key to the vault? And Fenrir swiped the key off its hook and unlocked the vault's door, disappearing inside. Unexasperated, Teolan turned to the other elf then. My lord Nolofinwe? Guilty as charged, Fingolfin replied in a flat voice. The smith sighed. I will never know what you creates are thinking. It must be beyond common understanding. He put his hands on his waist. Here, Akdalmon, he said at last, motioning to his young charge. See here before you are your lords, Fenrir and Nolofinwe of the House of Finwe. They travelled across the sea before you were born. The young boy bowed awkwardly to Fingolfin, his eyes wide as saucers. Fingolfin nodded, but before he could say anything, Fenrir returned from the vault carrying a leather pouch, 2 swords, and a great axe over his shoulders. Duelaran, Fenrir spoke up as he walked towards the front door. You will keep our meeting a secret. It is of grave importance. Arafinwe really did try his best with these concealments. I would hate for them to go to waste. And may I have use of your horse and cart? We need transport to my father's stables. We shall leave them for you there. Duelaran sighed, giving a small bow. Just don't do anything foolish, my lord. And if you somehow make it back to Endore, tell my friends and my cousins that I'm well. Fingolfin gave him an apologetic smile. Forgive us, he said, as Fenrir tossed him one of the swords, his elder brother already marching out the door. And as the 2 brothers left, the smith could do nothing but shake his head and wonder if he had consumed too much wine the night before. As Finarfin approached the great gates with the kind wine merchant, Miruion, he felt his heart plummet. For standing there, in a golden helm and armor with Finarfin's own crest etched on a radiant shield, stood his captain, Conway. Conway, whose station was above nominal guard duty and who would never have been there had not some great calamity struck the fair city. Hail, Captain Conway, he greeted at the gate. My king, the captain replied, looking at the wine cart up and down suspiciously. I have grave news for you. Finarfin nodded. Of course he did. Turning towards the wine merchant, he thanked him for the ride. Are you sure you don't need me to take you to your house? I do not mind, Miruion replied. Finarfin put a gentle hand on his shoulder. Surely not. You have already done me a great kindness. Go home to your wife and daughters, and I will be sure to order some of your fine wine come next festival, said Finarfin as he leapt off the cart in one swift motion, ignoring Conway's frown of disapproval at his unlordly way of jumping off. But Finarfin had far greater concerns at the moment. Miruion nodded to them then, and urged his horse forward. As he disappeared into the city, Finarfin stood there by his captain, waiting for him to lose his composure. The warrior lasted almost a full minute. My king, Conway said, unable to take the silence. I will not ask why you failed to return on your own horse, or why there are grass stains on your robes. He paused, but Finarfin continued to stand silent. The captain swallowed nervously. This morning 2 elflings attacked Ingweon. We believe them to be Vanir. And Finarfin didn't know what he had been expecting. Fire maybe. A raging Nerdanel likely. But an assault on Ingwe's son? Most certainly not. I am going to kill them, he muttered under his breath. Did his brother have to answer every difficulty with violence? He would find those 2 morons and send them back to Mandos. My king, what did you say? Finarfin turned, and his eyes were like daggers for a moment. Then he took a deep breath. Don't worry about this, young friend, he answered, trying to keep his voice calm. But I do need you to do a favor for me while I attend to matters. Anything, my lord. Finarfin yanked a small chain off his neck and held it out to his captain. Conway stared at the small key dangling from it. Hand this to Lady Earwen. She will know what to do with it. Please, I need to see the events concerning Ingweon. Finarfin smiled when his captain nodded and took the chain and bowed. Of course. May I escort you to the palace? They took Ingwen and his guardsmen there to rest. Finarfin mentally winced. If he went to the palace, it would become his prison. He would be chained by courtesies and paperwork till order remained, while Feanor ran amok in the city. Not a pleasant fate. He shook his head. No, thank you. I would like to visit a florist and get a gift for my kinsman before I personally give my sympathies to Ingwen. But do tell, are there any leads on the ones who struck him? Not many. A witness claimed that they ran towards the old Feanorian district. Another says they moved like the Ainur. Most agree that they were blonde of hair and dressed plainly, most likely of the Vanyar. One was quite short. Finarfin smiled despite himself. Oh, how Feanor hated being called short. Thank you, Conway. Please let me know if you learn anything else. You can send for a replacement guard at your convenience. I do believe this was an isolated event, perhaps children on dare. And if they're Vanyar, then I am sure Ingwen will deal with them justly. I assume you have men out searching? His captain nodded. Yes, my king. They will not be able to hide for long. Finarfin smiled. The thing with children is that they often lack subtlety. He clasped a hand on his soldier's shoulder. Fare thee well. I shall see you shortly. Conway bowed and began to make his way up the hill towards the palace. Finarfin watched him leave, then slowly walked in the general direction of the florist in case anyone was watching. When he was sure the coast was clear, he ducked behind a pillar and took a deep breath. Think, Ara, think, he whispered to himself. There was simply no way he was going to make it to either the forge or the stables, the two places Feanor was most likely to be, without being stopped 1,000 times. The atmosphere in the city was electric and buzzing with the news of the assault on the prince. That meant he had only one option. Or at least only one easy option. Oh, how he wished his son or daughter were here. Galadriel and Finrod were so much more creative and detailed with their concealments. Finarfin thought of simply singing new clothes. He could get away with a cloak and a hood, right? But as soon as the thought crossed his mind, he realized such a plan was doomed to failure. Being one of the only blonde Noldor in a city where the entire populace was on the lookout for two blonde idiots was not a good idea, regardless of if he had a hood on or not. Finarfin sighed. He mumbled a few words of a song and attempted to give himself nondescript dark hair and grey eyes like almost everyone else. He also concealed his elegant robes in a guise of plain shirt and leggings. This would do for now. Little did Finarfin realize that in his efforts to disguise himself, he had accidentally weakened the enchantments he had placed on his brothers to the point of near unraveling. The stables of Finwë were situated on the outskirts of the city near a small forest that backed the towering Pelorus. Fingolfin and Feanor eyed one of the stable houses from their post behind the last tree of the forest. I left the drafts, Feanor whispered to his brother. Well, I know it, Fingolfin hissed back. His people had no horses at all until Madros had given him back the ones Feanor had stolen at Alqualonde. But at least you have dozens of strong war horses. You know what we had on the ice? Lady Elme's hunting dogs. Feanor raised an eyebrow. Hunting dogs? Yes. She charged Findarato a premium to drag his treasures on sleds across the ice. Trust Findarato to bring his treasure. You can tell Ara we don't have room for any more trinkets. Fingolfin smirked. Trinkets? You better be careful, brother. Don't use that word around Thingol. He'll say something insulting about your Silmarils. I happen to like my head, so I will refrain while you have that axe. For the stars above! Is that a third sound in there from your mouth? Who is even this Thingol? Oh, that's right. You died immediately on stepping foot in Belabriand. You wouldn't be too familiar with the language or its pronunciations. I did not die immediately. You don't even know who Thingol is. Feanor sighed. Forget it. I am sure I will meet this Thingol soon. Wait a moment. Do you mean Elva? Elve Thindakal. Now who's the perceptive one? Well, apparently not you. I don't have time for this nonsense. Every second we wait is a second that our children must face Moringotto alone. And he turned his attention back to the stables before half yelling, half whispering something that sounded like "time to go," as he leapt up and ran across the stable yard. Surely this is how he died so soon the first time, Fingolfin thought. Groaning, he got up and chased his elder brother across the lawn. Reaching the stable horse, he saw that the large box on the end of the row held 2 gentle giants. "Autumn is with us today," Fëanor proclaimed excitedly as he undid the latch to their stall. "Bodore and Astaldor." Fingolfin read the horses' names off the plague. Fëanor attached lead ropes to both of their halters. Between the 2 great draft horses, he looked like a child. Fingolfin thought of pointing it out, but declared that Beleriand would be better suited for such comments. They were frighteningly close to some of his wife's favorite gardens, so he needed to make sure this little mission remained as clandestine as possible. Antagonizing Fëanor about his height would not achieve such ends. "I will find their harnesses," he volunteered instead. Walking outside and around the stable house, he sure enough found 2 large harnesses resting in the shade on the side of the structure that faced the mountains. "Nara!" he called, and soon Fëanor was there with the horses, and the 2 brothers worked to get the harnesses on them. They were almost done when their luck ran out. "Someone is coming!" Fëanor hissed. And centuries of living on a war front had conditioned Fingolfin to hear the careless footsteps and even more careless whistling. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. No doubt whoever had come to check on the stables was not expecting to see the backsides of 2 draft horses poking out from behind the end of the stable house. "Who goes there?" a feminine voice asked, with a slight tremble in it. And Fëanor yelled a short war cry and leapt onto the back of the white draft, not caring at all that there was no saddle, or that the heel chain of the harness would drag. Fingolfin almost put up his hands in exasperation, but he had no time for such dramatics. Instead, he found himself leaping on to the bay horse to go chase after the wild maniac he unfortunately called his brother after he accidentally killed someone. Fëanor's horse was already charging around the corner of the stables as Fingolfin urged the bay to follow. And as they peeled around the stable structure, Fingolfin saw the young Eleth with a pail of grain in hand. The terror he saw reflected in the Eleth's brown eyes was indescribable. For it was in that moment of adrenaline that the enchantments of Finarfin unraveled completely. And that young girl did not see 2 deranged Vanya commoners, which surely would have been terrifying enough, but instead she saw Fëanor himself, his silver eyes gleaming like stars, galloping straight towards her on a towering white horse, the chains of a logging harness rattling like clanking armor of 1,000 soldiers. And behind him came Fingolfin, long dark hair still tangled from the sea, his fair face set with determination. The Eleth screamed then, and screamed some more, her cries echoing out the bellories to resound throughout the city. Nerdanel, wife of Fëanor and mother of 7 headstrong but beloved sons, now all lost across the sea, sat in her lonely studio working on a new sculpture. Then she heard a scream, the likes of which she had not heard in the blessed realm since before the darkening. And one thought alone, crossed her mind. Fëanor. Calmly putting her tools down, the red-haired daughter of Mahdan considered her options. Surely Fëanor had not returned, for he was exiled, and worse, she had felt him die. Her dearest friend, Amaire, was going through the same grief. But Nerdanel had to be sure. So she opened her mind to Osanwe, and probed the marriage bond that would have been dim and dormant if her husband resided still in Mandos. But instead of shadowed stillness, she was met with a raging wall of living fire. While such mental fortifications shielded her husband's mind from her, it did answer all her questions. Fëanor was alive and avoiding her. Clearly, it was time to get the ladies back together. Finarfin was walking up the hill towards the center of shining Tyrion when he heard the clatter of hooves and a dragon of metal scream soon following. Looking up, he saw an image that would be forever etched into his mind. Fëanor and Fingolfin were riding like the warriors of Tulkas down the city streets on 2 heavy drafts, harnesses dragging on the diamond streets. "You fools!" he yelled as they approached, the only elf not to dive out of the way. And recognition crossed Fëanor's fair eyes, and as he galloped past his brother, he reached down and grabbed Finarfin's arm, pulling him off his feet and swinging him up behind him. And the 3 lords of the Noldor ran all the way through their beloved city, through the great gates, and out past Galakiria, leaving behind them chaos not seen since Melkor fled on the back of Ungoliant. End of chapter 3. Stay tuned.